AI Mentors is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Our podcast, AI Mentors, brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success, and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI Mentors cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career.
You're listening to AI Mentors. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Bill Schmarzo. Bill is the Chief Innovation Officer for Hitachi Vantara, and he is also an author of a book, The Art of Thinking Like a Data Scientist. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thanks, JP. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Great. Let's start. If you can, give us a brief overview of your background, starting with how you first got involved in technology, talking us through your career path, some of the interesting roles you've held along the way, leading us up to your current position here with Hitachi.
Wow, brief. That's not very well. So, I really got interested in data and analytics. Even as a kid, I used to play this game called Stratomatic Baseball. And it was a game that was based on numbers. It was sort of the precursor to a lot of the sabermetrics that goes on in the sports, in baseball in particular. And so I've always had kind of a thing for data and numbers. And when I was in college, I kind of fueled that by getting more involved in computer science. And my first job at Arthur Andersen was really around data-based systems and analytics. And then I discovered this company called Metaphor Computers in the early 1980s, which was really, for me, one of those epiphany turning points in your life where this was a company that was building a decision support system. It had borrowed very heavily from a lot of the technology at Xerox PARC that went on to also become part of Apple. Now the GUI interface and Ethernet connectivity and remote keyboards and graphical, it just was an amazing tool for doing analysis, and I was all in on it. And I will tell you, just that company and the people there, in particular my engagement with some of our customers, Procter & Gamble probably most notably, just really fueled my interest in leveraging data to really help drive value. So throughout my entire career, JP, I really haven't worked for companies as much as I've worked for a mission. And that mission has always been trying to help organizations do better with data and analytics. How do they get more value out of it? So that journey took me through a tour of duty with Ralph Kimball, who's famous, of course, for his data warehouse, data mart creator. Went to Business Objects, where I was the vice president of analytic applications. And then again, as what happened in most of our life, I had another epiphany moment, and that's when I became the vice president of advertiser analytics at Yahoo. So up until this point, for the past 20-some years of my life, I'd really been a data warehouse BI guy, really understand the potential of that. And then I go to Yahoo as the vice president of advertiser analytics. At the time, we were developing this technology called Hadoop. And everything I knew about analytics took a pivot, changed dramatically. At Yahoo, we had to build very detailed profiles in every one of our visitors. All 500 million of our visitors, we had a very detailed profile on what things they were most interested in. Right? We knew, for example, what sites they'd been to, how long they'd spent on a site, what ads they'd clicked on, what they didn't click on, what keywords. We knew so much about their digital fingerprints that we used that to build very detailed profiles on each and every one of them. What it is they might want to buy was really the propensity, right? So that when they came to our site, or any site that we managed, we had a microsecond to figure out what ad to show them and where to put that ad on the page. So it was this whole conversion of realizing that when you start talking about this world of big data, it wasn't the volume of data that was powerful. It was actually the granularity, that I could build these very detailed profiles on everybody. I could figure out what they were most interested in. I could figure out the kinds of activities they got, what times of day they would come on, what sign. If you knew so much about your customers like this, then you were in a tremendous position to really help provide value to them, to deliver the right sort of recommendations as far as products or reading material, whatever it is you wanted. You knew so much about them that you were positioned to do so much for them. So that was kind of this, JP, for me, this epiphany moment that it wasn't about the volume of data. It was really about the granularity. And by the way, that same granularity concept holds true, obviously, in IoT, right? Where we're building these digital twins, all these very detailed profiles in every clutch, every ball bearing, right? We build all these detailed profiles that helps us to better manage and optimize the operations.
Yeah, I mean, look, what you're talking about was sort of the early evolution. What is now is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and trying to predict the thought process of the consumers within a split second for real-time customization of experience. So it's great to hear what was happening. You know, what is almost a decade ago now, leading us into why we have such a personalized online experience. So then you made another switch into C-suite level role with EMC. Talk to us about how that came about, because you spent almost 8 years with those guys.
Yeah, it was as it typically happens in most of these situations. A good friend of mine who had worked together at Business Objects reached out to me and said, "Schmarz, I got a great job for you. Your Yahoo experience has given you something that's very unique. You've and sort of going back to the Yahoo experience too, JP. One thing is that what was the biggest struggle for me at Yahoo was I carried a lot of old baggage with me about how I thought the way data and analytics worked. And I really didn't achieve success at Yahoo until I let go of that, until I realized that that's holding me back, that some of these concepts were holding me back. And so I developed a whole new set of fresh concepts about how to approach these kind of problems. And so when my friend reached out to me, he said, "No, you have a different way of looking at how we're doing this data thing. You think about EMC, we have all this storage. We're storing massive amounts of data for some of the biggest corporations in the world, and they're not getting as much value out of that data as they could. We think we have an opportunity to really transform how EMC approaches and works with its customers, and how we can do it not from just selling a product perspective, but really helping customers to monetize all this data they have access to." So I became the CTO of their big data practice. Now it was great because I was on the front lines of working with customers, and some really cool customers who really who are on a mission to take all this data that we've invested in, and let's figure out how we get value from it. And so whether it was in the healthcare industry or the gaming industry or retail industry or the airline, I mean, there was a number of different industries across which we worked with customers who were all wrestling with this data monetization problem. And we soon learned that they all were facing the same problems. Like my second book, the Big Data MBA, really talks in detail about this concept we call the Big Data Business Model Maturity Index, which was really how do organizations become more effective at leveraging data and analytics to power their business models. And so the EMC experience and the team that we had pulled together there was truly an epiphany moment for me. And it also helps too, that I've always found in my life that when you work for companies that really care for their customers, you can have a much more intimate, provocative, challenging conversation with those customers when they know that you're there to help them be successful and you're not there to pick their pockets. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, because I think you gain their trust, and that can take you a long way, particularly when there's infinite options for suppliers. To have that personal connection and the buy-in can make all the difference. It's something that should resonate with a lot of people listening here. So then, look, a great role at EMC. Coupling while at EMC, you start to take on lots of other projects, board of advisor positions, executive fellows, professors, and you also embarked on your authoring career, publishing some books. How did you juggle those various tasks while working in a fairly challenging position?
It's amazing how much work you can get done on an airplane and sitting in a Starbucks in a strange town. I wrote most of my book sitting in seat 21F on flights, and jokingly, I was doing a lot of work in Kansas City, which had a nonstop between San Fran and Kansas City. And they had a Starbucks here in the airport, and whenever I got done with our customer engagements there, I'd always go early to the Starbucks there, and I'd sit in that airport and I would crank out stuff. It just became, you found time for it because you got so excited. Now I kind of got duped into doing my first book. The first book is just called Big Data. And it was our marketing folks at EMC basically said, "Hey, Schmarzo, you got tons of blogs out there. about big data, and there's not really a lot of good big data books out there. Why don't you just take all of your blogs and pull them together and turn it into a book? Of course, I was stupid and naive, and I said, oh, that sounds easy. Sure, I'll just take my blogs, kind of couple them together, and I'll have a book. Well, let's be honest, it doesn't work that way, right? The blogs do give you lots of the meat, but what I found, especially as I kept thinking about my book, not as a book to inform people, but I kept thinking of it as a textbook. I want to write textbooks. I want to write books that people use, not just read and put on a shelf somewhere or buy and put on a shelf somewhere. I want to see a book that's thumbed and got Post-it notes all over it and it's got dog ears and such. I wanted my books to be used. And so as I started to pull all these things together, I realized that some of the blogs I had written weren't actionable. They were interesting, but what was the call to action? And then the other thing is that while you pull these blogs together, you're realizing I'm missing transition points. It doesn't tell a story, and it doesn't have a consistent call to action all the way across it. So that was I found the time. I got tricked into doing it. Once I got started, I couldn't stop. It took a lot of work, but it was beneficial because I saw students start to use it. In particular, my second book, The Big Data MBA, is a book that's used by a number of different universities across the world. And it's great. Every now and then I get a call or a text or an email from somebody saying, hey, read your book, loved it. I have a question about this, right? I love that. Oh, I had a question about this. Can you explain this concept that you talked about on page 67? Oh, okay. So the opportunity to create a textbook that somebody could really use, JP became the overriding factor for me. That I really felt this burning desire to give something back to people that they could actually use. And by the way, I'd say everything that's in that book are things that I have personally done with customers. So I know that these things work. And it doesn't mean it's the only way to do it. There's many ways to skin the cat. But I know from firsthand experience that everything I've written in those books are things that I have done personally myself.
So thank you to whoever in EMC tricked Bill into writing the book, because we've all benefited from that, and it looks like a tap that's not going to turn off anytime soon. Great. So Bill, April 2018, Hitachi, how does that come about? And Chief Innovation Officer, what is your day job now? What are you doing?
Well, how I got into the job was because I was running a class at San Francisco, and we were doing a class on digital transformation. And I had my students doing some research on it. In particular, I wanted the students to understand GE, who was the poster child of digital transformation. You know, they rose to power very, very quickly and died almost as quickly. And if you want to learn something, it's nothing better than to sick a bunch of MBA students on it who are trying to get A's for their class. And off they went. They did research. Some of them actually contacted people inside of GE. So they came back with sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly for the GE digital transformation, which was very illuminating. So we're getting ready it's a Thursday night class. We're getting ready they're going to present their stuff to me and their learnings. And I run into my friend, Brad Surik. Brad and I had worked together at Business Objects. He had been the chief operating officer at GE Digital. And I said, but he had left. And I said, Brad, class is going to do a review. Are you available Thursday night? Can you sit in and do like a fireside chat? Let them throw at you ideas about what they thought happened, and where you can bounce back to them what really happened. And so, Brad's a very cool guy, very engaging. He goes, sure, I'd love to do that. And so Brad comes to the class. We have this amazing conversations. The students are presenting ideas, and Brad's having this conversation. It's a great class. I mean, these classes last like 3.5 hours. So they're intense, they're hard, and everybody is leaving there all jazzed up. And as they're walking out the door, Brad grabs me by the arm. He says, Bill, I got a job for you. I was like, what do you mean you got a job? He says, oh, I'm not a Hitachi Vantara, and I got the perfect job for you. And Brad did. He had the perfect job for me. I was able to bring him along some of my friends who had either left recently at EMC because they had been acquired by Dell. So I brought the heart of my value engineering team. I brought the heart of my design thinking team, and I brought the heart of my data science team along with me. And it's really great when you can work with friends, people who you really believe in. It's even more fun when you can work together to solve problems that look like they're impossible. And that is what my challenge is how do we, as a chief innovation officer, what are we doing from an innovation perspective with respect to data and analytics? How are we empowering organizations? How are we creating assets that appreciate in value, not depreciate the more that they're used? So a lot of very interesting, provocative stuff we're doing. We don't do it in an ivory tower, though. Hitachi overall has a heritage of what they call co-creation, which is they like to work with select customers to build out technologies. And the best way to validate that technology is useful is to actually build it with a customer. And so we do a lot of co-creation with customers around a lot of these data and analytics abstract ideas in the innovation space. And we're very, very lucky to work with some amazing customers across a number of different industries who are really trying, they see these data and analytics as these unique assets they are, and they're trying to say, how do I reframe the conversation? How do I look at these analytic assets and data assets in a way that's more comprehensive? And so the best part of my job is the fact that I work with some outstanding customers, and I've got a great team with me, because if I didn't have a great team, then I would be literally nothing.
I think it's great to hear how your journey has been a combination of timing, referrals, chance, and just acknowledging that, you know, it's good to make a change when presented with another new exciting challenge. So it's equally refreshing to hear that happens at all levels, not just at the individual contributor level who are still finding their pattern and finding what works. So it's very much speaks to as you get to a senior level, you know, you can still be enticed by new challenges and bigger projects and continue to self-develop, which is great. Okay, I definitely want to spend some time talking about your most recent book, The Art of Thinking Like a Data Scientist. When did you start thinking about this as a concept for a workbook, and give us some insight into what someone reading for the first time would find?
So JP, I have been running workshops around thinking like a data scientist now probably for 5, 6, 7 years, really to help our organization understand that whole data science mindset. And in my second book, The Big Data MBA, there's sprinklings of this concept throughout the book. And we had used the book, try to teach the thinking like a data scientist concept, but it didn't hang together well enough. And I thought I need to turn this into a workbook that can guide people through this process, which, by the way, is very interesting that I would have a process for something that's so nonlinear as data science. But I found I needed to have a separate workbook that was just dedicated to somebody who wanted to sit down, could open the thing up. In fact, it's designed like a workbook. You open it up and there's places to write notes and there's places to, capture ideas and to brainstorm. I just needed something that when I sat down with either students, and more I was doing this with executives, the C-suites of some very large organizations were realizing that in order to change their game, they needed to change their frame. That is, that the way they thought about data and analytics was antiquated and wasn't matching what was happening today. So I found this need to have this kind of a workbook that is fairly simple in structure and concept, but very quickly gets into some very deep cultural and organizational issues. For example, all ideas are worthy of consideration. It's one of my favorite lines I like to use in the book. All ideas are worthy of consideration. That's a hard concept from some organizations who have traditionally lived by a command and control structure where only the best ideas come from the C-suite. And now we're saying, wait a second, your best ideas may not come from the C-suite. Your best ideas may come from somewhere else. And in fact, what we're learning in the world of AI, in data science, is that the best ideas don't come from the C-suite at all. They come from the front lines. They come from the point of customer engagement, whether you're a nurse or a teacher or a technician or an operator or an engineer, right? It's the front lines where you're really learning stuff. And so there had to be this cultural transformation process, which the book tries to weave together by using the book. The whole thinking like a data scientist approach is there's design thinking techniques intertwined throughout this, because it isn't just about getting the organization to understand what data science is, but if we think about what makes data science successful, it's how do you learn from failure? Data science is a failure-centric practitioner, right? You're gonna try lots of different ideas, and most of them are going to fail. But if you got to have all these sort of might moments. I like to say, as an organization, if you don't have enough might moments, you'll never have any breakthrough moments. And so you've got to encourage this idea of trying different things. Try, learn, adapt. Try, learn, adapt. That's not how normal CXOs work. And by the way, that's not how you build a data warehouse. Right? A data warehouse. When I was taught to build a data warehouse, it starts with a schema. You build that schema, and that schema might take you 4 to 6 months to build the damn schema, right? And it's about as brittle as a schema can get, because the minute you want to add a new data source, then the DBA basically finds a new job in a different company. That's not how data science works. Data science is about trying different things, hyper-parameter optimization, and grabbing new features here and doing this and meshing them together. And we're going to try this combination of neural networks. And we're going to try that, right? It's all about trying different things. And that is not a normal process for a lot of traditional organizations. And so, really long-winded answer here, JP. I apologize.
No, not at all. I like it, and I didn't want to interrupt because what you were offering was so insightful. The concept of every idea is worth consideration. It reminds me of Ray Dalio's book Principles, where he talks about an idea meritocracy. So best idea wins, and I think that's great to hear that it's being championed within data science, and something you're speaking to not just C-suite level people, but are teaching individuals to understand that mindset. It's great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we quickly learned that a data scientist can build the best algorithms in the world, but if no one uses them, who cares? And so your data science journey has to start with adoption in mind, right? Stephen Covey said, begin with an end in mind. Well, the end in mind is adoption. If we don't get people to use them, it's why bother? And then more and more with tools like reinforcement learning and AI, the more that these people use these things, the better they get if we architect them right. So this adoption problem is less to do with technology and more to do with organizational issues. And also, one of my observations we try to address in that book is that most data science projects don't fail because of technology. They fail because of passive aggressive behaviors. That you've not brought all the stakeholders into the process early. They've not had a chance to have their voices heard. They've not had a chance to have their ideas put forth. And if you don't bring them into the process on day zero, eventually they're going to get you.
Yeah, I think it's such an important point to decide what success looks like on a data science project, and deciding that from day one so you don't embark on a journey and find yourself completely off the overall goal, and making sure everyone's on the same page. Look, you're a busy man. You cover a lot, whether it's from the books to your day job to being a professor. What do you love most about your role, and what are you excited about to work on in the future as our industry continues to evolve?
No doubt. The thing that excites me most about my job is the opportunity to work with some very engaging customers and a very creative team that doesn't know rank and title to help try to solve these problems. Every one of our customer engagements becomes a sandbox to learn new stuff. Yeah, we're going to carry forward things we've learned in the past, but I'm really fortunate. I've got a team who is willing to challenge each other in a very positive sense. We all trust each other, and we learn from that. I'm constantly getting emails from people on my team who are saying, "Hey, Bill, did you ever think about it this way? What about that?" Or they give me a call and ask me. And I find that when my first reply to a question is no, that sometimes that's the question that has the most impact. That when I stop and think about it, I say no because I have the wrong frame. And I think, JP, the thing that I struggle with more than anything else is how am I constantly willing to change my frame? When I learned about data science, it was about letting go of the data warehouse frame of mind. When I started this whole thinking like a data scientist process, it was all about how do I accept the frame about the language of the customer, which is really design thinking. How can I learn to speak and understand the language of the customer? And then the other component was the other frame I like to try to make sure I understand is the frame of economics, the frame of how do you create wealth and value? Because in the heart of this, it all comes together. If you can't make organizational change that helps you to take the economic value of these data to drive improvements in performance that people actually use, then why bother?
Great point. Like to finish then, Bill, just getting your take on the current job market. You've a lot of experience advising academics and career people at all levels on how to navigate, and you're somebody who's successfully transitioned into different roles over time. So what do you see as being the biggest obstacles to people advancing roles, whether it be a change in skill set, and what advice could you share to candidates who are coming to the marketplace now, and it's a different environment to what they were experiencing in the last time they were on a job search?
So I think probably the biggest challenge that new graduates are going to wrestle with, as well as a lot of people who are in jobs right now that they're not happy with, is rigidity. What I mean by that is that you come out with what you think your end goal is, and you start immediately working towards that end goal, and you need to be flexible in that process. And what I mean by that is that where you're going, you may have an idea, but where you end up might be different than where you thought you were going. That there's going to be lots of opportunities to learn and grow along the path, and don't pass those opportunities. For example, I'm going to be doing a lecture to some graduating seniors from the National University of Ireland in Galway. And one of the things I want to tell them is, as you're graduating into an environment where the unemployment's not great, and it's not a good situation right now, don't overlook the power of nonprofits. Look at a nonprofit opportunity. It may not pay very well, it may pay squat, but a chance to really work with and learn and grow within an environment. Don't overlook what you could do in nonprofits. Don't overlook what you can do in volunteer situations and such. So I think what people need to do is you need to have an open mind about where it is generally you're going, but be willing to bob in between those. So don't think railroad tracks, think guardrails, and bounce in between. And yeah, take on some challenges that on the surface may not look like they're things you want to do. But again, as you mentioned, JP, a lot of my growth happened because I took risks on things that I didn't know were going to be successful. I got to admit to you as well that I have been in my lifetime fired 3 times. So you're going to sometimes take on jobs that are going to be marvelous, great. You're going to learn a ton. You're going to take on jobs where you are not a match. And I believe I come to work every day willing to be fired for what I believe in, because at the end of the day, the only thing I've got is me. And so when you're talking about people who are looking to advance their careers or change their careers or even get their career started, don't be too rigid. Look for experiences. And when you get an experience, make the best out of it for as long as you can. If it is a situation you can't stand, and it's a bad situation, then look elsewhere. But, I'll finish up with this, JP. I told my kids, I said, courtesy of my generation, we have totally screwed up the financial system. And so you're going to probably work till you're 70 years old anyway. So until you're 30 years old, don't worry about a career. Explore different things, try different things, see what you do, if what you like. But until you're 30, just take advantage of being young, and don't buy a house. And if you get married, don't have kids right away. Don't take on a lot of liabilities, but give yourself the freedom to try different things. You never know what you might find, because if you don't have enough might moments, you'll never have any breakthrough moments.
That's a perfect way to end this. Bill, thank you so much. This has been incredibly enjoyable. Lots to learn from this. And I think it's been great to have you on and speak. It's been an absolute pleasure. Everyone listening, make sure you go check out The Art of Thinking Like a Data Scientist, incredible go-to guide. And yeah, Bill, listen, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, JP. Thanks for having me, and good luck going forward.
Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following: AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.